Hello and welcome to Lesson 3 of the Advanced Preparatory Piano Tutor Book. So for this lesson we're going to start looking at notes that go below the actual stave on ledger lines, and we're going to learn the B and the A and the G notes. We're also going to stretch up one more on our intervals and learn about seventh intervals. And also we're going to learn about octave intervals as well. So the lesson begins by showing you the low B note, which is in contrast to the high B, which you've already been familiar with. So you can see it's on a ledger line just below the stave there. So your first task then would be a writing task, where you have a go at writing some of those low B notes. Then the low B appears in this piece of music here called 2/4 polka with B notes. Now because you've got the low B in it, it's a good idea to play in B position. So put your thumb on the B in the right hand before you start. The other little things you need to watch out for is at bar 13, 14, 15, 16, bar 17 there. You've got a finger 3 that moves up to the F note. So there, you're actually moving up to your D position for a little short while and then move back down to your C there. And then at bar 25, you move back down to B position. So that needs a little bit of analysis first. So I suggest you do some separate hand practice first, just practicing that right hand to make sure you're very familiar with where your hand will move into these new positions before you start. And then we move on to one note lower, the low A note, and you can see that that's written with 2 ledger lines below the stave, and it contrasts with the high A note that you're already familiar with. So again, you have the opportunity of writing some of these low A notes before you try the next piece, which is called rippling A notes. Now you'll see instantly that this piece is in the key of D major, and it is quite stretchy in places because the first bar is very much like playing an arpeggio. So you just need to be very, very clear about your fingering here and which notes you actually have under your fingers there before you start. Okay. You'll also notice that at bar 15 in the left hand, you've got a scale of G major there. So a little bit of practice of the G major scale before you play this piece will also help. After that, you need to watch very closely for the accidentals, because you'll see that there are some C naturals written through the whole of this piece and also some F naturals too. So just be very, very aware of those and make sure you know what those accidentals are and where you're moving to. You'll also notice at bar 23 you've got a scale of D major coming in the left hand. So again, a little bit of practice of your D major scale will help you in this piece too. And finally, you will notice as well that the piece ends on a low, low D note. So here you've got one of those famous silent changes where you change your finger very quickly and then go down to the bottom note there. Also be aware that the scale of D major starts on that low, low D as well. then finally we go on to the low G notes, going down even further on our ledger line reading. And you can see how the low G is just placed below 2 ledger lines on the stave. And that can be contrasted with the upper G, which you've already learned. You have another writing task, trying to write some of these G notes. And then you have another piece here called grazing low G notes, which has the low G in. Watch the staccatos as well when you play this. There is a bit of moving around too. You start on the low G here, you see, in the right hand before you start. And then here at bar 3, you move up to C position for that bit. So there's a constant sort of movement between these 2 notes here. Just beware of that. Then at bar 9 as well, you have a D position section. Moving down to C and E, you can see that all the intervals in that section are thirds. Here we go. And finally, we move on to the interval page, where we're learning about the 7th intervals. So we've stretched from the 5th to the 6th. Now we're going one more note up to your 7th. And your left hand as well. So your first task here is a writing task, where you're asked to write some 7th intervals above a low note here. So the first example's been done for you, which is your C. There's your 7th, you see, going up 7. And then you do it from a D note, and an F note, and a G note, and an A note. Then we go on to a piece called Summer Sunset. This is a very popular piece because it gives you the opportunity to try the pedal again. So all the way through this, you need to pedal each bar individually. You've also got the word largo, which means slow. And if you look closely at bar 17, you'll notice you've got the 8VA sign. You have seen this before, which means play an octave higher than written. Look closely at the fermata, the pause sign at the end, and also the rowl. And the whole piece is played very quiet and quiet. So watch out for these dynamics. Don't play this piece too loud. Express as well, that means expressive. Now, did you see at the end there, I held on to the fermata note just that little bit longer to give the pedal that chance to resonate through the whole of the piano and make a nice effect of summer sunset. Right, finally we've got the octave interval. We have come across this slightly in previous books when we've done the scales going from there to there, because that's an octave, isn't it? So we've got a special octave exercise here where you can have a practice going and trying up the notes from the 5th to the 6th, 7th and 8th. So all you've got to remember is for the 6th, the 5th, the 7th and the 8th, you use your little finger, and the rest of them just your normal fingers, like this. Now just watch that little twist at the end, because most people don't read that and they make mistakes on that. So just be careful on that. The same will apply with the left hand, but this time you'll be using your thumb to go up all the notes. And that completes lesson 3.